Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we are going to be talking about the biggest Bears win of the season, as well as trying to figure out and decipher some of what's going on with the Bulls and the Blackhawks. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. This season is in full stride. So make sure you head on over to icehogs.com because you can see some of the best hockey at one of the best AHL arenas around, less than 90 minutes from the city limits. Fun for the whole family. Head on over to icehogs.com, get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, thank you for recording on Monday. I was actually watching the Bears game on a flight from Los Angeles back to Chicago, which is not the most ideal of settings to watch the game, especially when I'm pumping my fist and yelling.
Well, I would be really struggling to be confined to my seat because there were some moments last night that I was pacing a little bit just because of how big this game was and how, things got a little close, as you kind of expected it to, but I would hate to have to watch such a big game on a plane for so many reasons.
Yeah, but I really didn't want to be contained. I wanted to be, jumping around and stuff too, except for the fact that I couldn't because the largest man I've ever seen in an airplane got seated next to me, and he took off part of my seat and part of the guy next on the other side of him's seat, and it really made an uncomfortable situation because I had this giant man pressed against me, and I ended up being pressed against the window of the airplane.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
No, there's really nothing you can do. It was a sold out flight. And that guy was in a assigned seat. That guy was there, and I was stuck next to him. And he was sweaty. It was gross. It was really one of the worst flights I've ever been on. And it's like a 4.5 hour flight. And if I didn't have the Bears to watch, and if the Bears would have lost, I probably would have been had been tased by an air marshal or something.
Yeah, at least that was one way to distract you from it all. It was not a game that we really would sit around and kind of be distracted about. Like the Bills game, the second half, I was only kind of half paying attention just because of how boring it was and what the score was. But, this was a pretty close game until the end, despite how the two teams played in the first half. It was a really good one to watch, and it really felt like a playoff game. It really did.
Yeah, it had all that in there, and the Bears defense was absolutely tuned up. Where should we jump in and start talking about this team? You want to start the game as a whole? Do you want to talk the offense, defense?
Well, why don't you start as the game as a whole? Because I think we have some few general ideas of what we want to say.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect. In my heart, I felt that the Bears could definitely be competitive with the Minnesota Vikings. And I think, a lot of us are buying into the hype of the Minnesota Vikings that we had going into the season where they were one of the Super Bowl favorites. And that's not to knock where they are now. It's just that they haven't had the success that I think they expected to. And, but they're still a very good team. And I think most of the national sports writers and prognosticators definitely predicted that the Vikings would win this game.
Oh yeah, I think plenty of people had the Vikings favored because the Bears still had to kind of prove themselves. And I mean, they really still have to prove themselves over a full season. But when you're the defending champions of the division and you went to the NFC Championship game last year, yeah, I mean, when you have pretty much the same roster and you're in the thick of a race, you're going to be favored in these matchups. And it wasn't surprising to see a lot of people picking the Vikings. I mean, I was kind of like you where I was thinking this game could go either way. I had some confidence that the Bears could win. Obviously, very hopeful that the Bears could win. But, I was also saying that I think it's, maybe it's a slight favor to the Vikings still. But, hey, the Vikings have, 3 wins at Soldier Field since 2000 or 2001? The Bears have always played them very well. But, you kind of take away those whole weird matchup history factors and you just look at the matchup that you had now and you have a young quarterback going up against an elite defense. And I think that's something that we really need to talk about in this show is when evaluating your quarterback in this game, a la Mitch Trubisky, you got to keep in mind that, yeah, there were some things you liked and disliked, but he was playing a really good defense. I mean, that defense is fierce.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one thing you definitely have to keep in mind is I know people are starting to, they've been roller coastering with Mitch Trubisky, with praising him as he's great and anointing him, and then suddenly jumping off the bandwagon and then jumping back on the bandwagon. Listen, this isn't, this is a far cry from the inconsistencies of Jay Cutler. This is a young quarterback who's shown absolute greatness and then had just mediocre games. When he's having a bad game, he's having a mediocre game, and because statistically, he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL.
And I think you also have to look at some of the situations he was in. I mean, I know we were kind of talking about the game as a whole, but while we're on Trubisky, I might as well go into Trubisky. There were some great things he did. We all know what the biggest thing he did was yesterday, probably consistently, was the rushing. There were times when I thought he was going to be sacked for a loss of 5-10 yards, and he was able to escape, dance away, and not only pick up yards, but pick up first downs. The way he kind of faked out a few guys and was able to just spin away, I mean, that was really impressive. And again, this is the Vikings defense. They're good at stopping this kind of thing. And Trubisky ran all over them.
Yeah, he did. And they talked about how they were going to set up a spy for him, and they switched up in the second half because I think they knew that that's what they were going to be doing. And a lot of the runs he had were just plays breaking down, and he took advantage of what was there. It wasn't him running for his life or him being a run first quarterback. It was he looked at his options, saw a big opening, and took it. And that's sometimes what you need to do is if you are a quarterback that is able to do that. I mean, you don't want to get into a situation where you're Cam Newton and RG3 earlier in their careers where they couldn't really throw well and they ended up just running a lot. Or I guess a better version of that would be Vince Young, where they just ran. And Mitch Trubisky can throw too, but he makes it an added dimension when you're able to run the ball. And I know Aaron Rodgers isn't known for his nimbleness, but he's athletic enough where if you give him, if it's 3rd and 5 and you give him an opening, he'll run for that first down. And he's fast enough to get it and get to the corner. Mitch Trubisky was doing that same thing. And what that does is if you have a quarterback that's a statue, you've got basically 11 guys defending 10 and advantage defense. If they've got to account for a quarterback that can also run, that takes that advantage away from the defense. And, the Bears kept that Vikings defense on their heels most of the day.
Could you imagine Mike Glennon against that Vikings defense?
Oh, it would have been a really ugly game. A really ugly game.
And here's something else to keep in mind. You said that Trubisky was looking at his options and decided to run. That's a great thing to bring up because The secondary on the Vikings is really good. If you're not going to force something, then make something of it. And he did. He would run and gain yards and gain first downs. He wasn't forcing a lot, even though there were ones he forced, and we will talk about those. He could have easily tried to force more throws than he did, but he ran instead. And against a very good Minnesota secondary, I think that's just a good job of evaluating your options.
Yeah, and I hear people beating up Mitch Trubisky about the game he had. And I mean, if you look at his stats, he threw for, let me see, he was 20 for 31 for 165 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and 43 yards rushing. Okay. Yeah, those aren't stellar numbers, and those are far cry from some of the games where he's just really gone off. But like to a point you said earlier, this is a really good defense. This was arguably one of the top 2 defenses people expected going into the season. And just like 3 weeks ago, they played the New Orleans.
I mean, look what this defense has done to guys like Aaron Rodgers.
Well, I mean, case in point is they played like 3 weeks ago the New Orleans Saints, who everyone is talking about like they're a juggernaut, and they, that quarterback was only able to throw for 120 yards and 1 touchdown against this team. The Bears had more passing yards. They had a lot more first downs and scored almost as many points. And this is a team where people say the quarterback is suspect. And this is against the same defense just a couple of weeks later.
Well, look, I'm going to say it again. Despite some of the not so great moments, in addition to the rushing, he made some clutch throws late in the game to pick up some first downs. One that really stuck out to me was, I think he threw it to Allen Robinson, and that moved the chains. They were deep in their zone, and it was 3rd and 8, and he fired a bullet to about the 40-yard line where Allen Robinson was, and that set up the Cody Parkey field goal. I mean, that was big, and that was in a very tight spot. So if you want to talk about tight spots, huge. Then there you go. He excelled in that spot.
Yeah, it was like you said, it was a 3rd and 8, and he got a 17-yard pass to Allen Robinson with less than 4 minutes left when the game was pretty tight. And when he does these things, he comes up with these huge plays. And when we had Jay Cutler, those are the types of plays where he would just shrink. Partly because of the play calling of the offense, and partly because he didn't rise to the occasion. So we've got a quarterback that's not too, the moment's never too big for him.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about those interceptions because it is a big topic of conversation. The second interception, I don't know what the heck that was, if it was a miscommunication, but it was bad, a bad interception. Now, the first one, the decision was very poor. Mitch should not have thrown that ball, but the actual throw was really good. Put this in perspective. He was triple teamed by great secondary players on the Vikings, and he still had to make a really good catch to intercept that ball. So, yeah, the decision was not good, but the throw was good, if that makes sense.
Mitch can really thread a needle.
And that's what he was trying to do. It wasn't a good choice because the Vikings defense is going to make those plays. And it was a mismatch from the beginning. I believe it was Taylor Gabriel he was targeting on that play. Am I right?
I believe it was.
Yeah, so I mean, it was kind of a mismatch as it was. But yeah, I mean, the throw wasn't bad. And a lot of people said, Jay Cutler does that. Jay Cutler, yada, yada, yada. Well, yeah, he forced a lot of throws, but, let that be a lesson to him. This is a time where he's really seeing an elite secondary. He's only seen this Vikings team twice. He saw him twice before this game. And this was the first time that he was playing in a game against the Vikings where playoff implications were on the line. His debut last year was against the Vikings, and then a meaningless Week 17 game. this was a big game, and we talked about rising to the occasion, and on a number of times he did. And another thing that I don't think people are talking about enough are the throws he made to get two-point conversions, which ended up being huge.
Yeah, those kind of helped shaped the way the game ended.
Yeah.
Minnesota got dominated 3.5 quarters of this game, and they made a run in the fourth quarter, and they had to alter the way that they played because of the fact that the Bears went for it and got those 2-point conversions. That they had to go for it as well, and that really made the push that the Vikings had to make that much harder to make. It was a tough situation for the Vikings. They didn't have an easy road coming back.
Exactly, and those were big, and those were both very good throws by Trubisky, so you got to give him credit there. Now, I know I sound like a huge avid Trubisky defender, and yes, I'm telling you right now, he was not perfect. There were a number of things that he didn't do well or didn't go right, and I mean, let's face it, he probably should have thrown a pick six. That was also kind of a forced throw that was lucky that it wasn't picked off, and you know exactly which one I'm talking about. But, you got to look at the positives and learn from the negatives in this game, because there were a lot of positives to build on from and a number of negatives to learn from. To say that he had a terrible game, I think, is inaccurate, despite the fact that the stats did not look all that great. And, I got to say, for a great Vikings front seven, you got to give the Bears offensive line credit. I thought they did a pretty dang good job of protecting Trubisky.
Yeah, I mean, the pocket didn't hold forever, but it was, there weren't that many times where he just was being, manhandled and, given no time. There was no situation that Trubisky went through that Kirk Cousins didn't go through like 10 times worse.
Exactly. And again, it wasn't great against the run, but it hasn't been great against the run. But, for Trubisky, it was doing a pretty solid job. And I say a pretty dang good job considering who they were playing.
Yeah, I mean, the Vikings defense is very stout against the run, and the Bears did much better with the run than they had. Partly was the commitment that they made. In previous games, the Bears couldn't run the ball to save their lives to run the clock out. And in this game, they at least got, they got 3, 4, 5 yards in carries. I mean, there was definitely times where they got blown up, but they were picking up yards when they needed to pick up yards to try to kill the clock and to give them a short field or a short down for third down. So it was at least trending in the right direction. It's just that there's too many times when the run game they're not opening holes in the center of the line, and Matt Nagy's too quick to try to do sweeps, and everybody is prepared for the Bears to run sweeps, and they're not working anymore.
Oh no, I mean, you especially saw that yesterday. I mean, they were losing yards on some of those plays. And if you want my personal opinion on the run game, I thought the first half was significantly better, just overall effective. Say what you will about Jordan Howard, I thought his first half was pretty good. He was powering through some pretty tight holes, if you even want to call them holes. I mean, he was getting pretty much bottled up, but he powered through pretty well, I thought. And Tariq Cohen, he made some really nice runs, and there were times when he either lost yards or he had that fumble, which I believe was in the second half. But, I thought that they did some pretty good things on the run game. Again, considering who their opponent was, this wasn't some, garbage defense. The way Jordan Howard powered his way through the first half, I thought was pretty impressive. In the second half, he was pretty much getting bottled up and stopped and not going anywhere. But first half, he looked pretty good.
Yeah, and going back to Mitch quickly, one of the nice things was if you look at the spread that he had, Kirk Cousins almost exclusively went to his 2 top wide receivers. That's who got the ball. And with the Bears moved the ball around quite a bit. 4 wide receivers, 2 running backs, and 3 tight ends all caught passes.
Yeah, no, I mean, most of the time I saw a completion for Kirk Cousins, it was to Thielen. And those were pretty much just quick check down passes. They weren't, anything deep.
But where the offense, again, I mean, it's a sort of a pattern where they really frustrated me is that when the second half, when they're up, they don't go for the jugular.
I know.
They start doing cute plays and they get conservative and they're more willing to punt. And it's reflective in how these games are ending. It's reflective in, the themes of what we're seeing. Here's a stat. This is the point differential the Bears have versus their opponents for this season by quarter and by half. The Bears are outscoring their opponents by 33 points in the first quarter, by 69 points in the second quarter.
Nice.
By 38 points in the third quarter, and they are being outscored by 38 points in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So that sum total is the Bears are outscoring opponents by 102 points in the first half, and it's a net 0 in the second half. So they're getting leads, and then they're just holding on for dear life. What I want to see is look what New Orleans did to the Philadelphia Eagles last week or yesterday. They got that lead, and they never let their foot off the gas. They ran that score up, and they win like 45-7 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a thing of beauty if you're a Saints fan.
Yeah, and it's they never gave the Eagles hope. The Eagles never had hope that they could get back in that game because anytime they got anything going, the Saints just squashed it and then, either intercepted or caused a fumble, and then they just turned around and then they scored. And it was just every time there was any sort of life breathed into the Eagles, the Saints just stomped it out and made them just wish, clock watch and wait for the game to be over. The Bears are letting teams in, and then at the end of the game, those teams have hope, and the Bears are just playing hang on.
You can go back to the last 2 games against the Lions and against the Vikings. You just look at the scores and say, okay, that's a pretty close game. It was probably a good game. The truth of the matter was the Bears were far and away better than the Vikings yesterday, and they were far and away better than the Lions, even further better than the Lions. I mean, sure, the Vikings defense made some nice plays. I mean, they had a few interceptions, they caused a fumble, but if you watch that game, you watch the first 3 quarters, you say to yourself, how on earth are the Bears not up by like 25-30 right now? I mean, the Bears dominated that game. They moved the ball so much better in the first half. We'll get into the defensive details, but long story short, the defense stomped Kirk Cousins into the dirt and kept stomping him into the dirt. I mean, those games were not close play-wise, but score-wise they were for that reason. And I think, a lot of it is not stepping on the throats. The other, and again, we're going to get into defense later, I know, but I'm just going to bring this up now. I despise prevent defense. Like towards the end and you have a lead. I hate it. Hate it. Hate it. Hate it.
Yeah, but continue with the offense is, I just made some quick notes, is in the second half, I mean, for the whole game, but especially in the second half when they have leads, they need to stay out of those 3rd and long situations because that's where they get into trouble is they play conservative, and then it ends up with 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 7. And then they have to, they're much more capable this year than in any year I can remember recently of being able to convert those. But the longer out you go from that first down line, the odds of you getting that first down drop precipitously, and your play options start dropping too. If you got to get a 10-yard, clearly you're going to pass. You're not gonna try to run for that first down. You're
Right.
gonna,
And if you have to pass, there's the chance that it's incomplete. And if it's incomplete, it stops the clock.
yeah, but also if you get into a passing down, then they play a defense geared towards the pass because they know you're going to pass. If you get down to 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, it keeps that defense honest. They have to be prepared for a run. They have to be prepared for a pass. And the Bears need to do that, and they get really conservative in the second half on those first 2 downs, and sometimes they try to take a big shot, usually on 2nd down, take big shots, and they wind up in a situation where they're in 3rd and medium to 3rd and long, and then they're comfortable if they don't get it punting and putting the prevent defense back on the field. They also need to stop being cute on some of these plays. Is if you got a 3rd and 2, don't try to run a double reverse or some sort of misdirection play or bringing Taylor Gabriel around from the end. Is get it to the point where you just smash mouth and run Jordan Howard or quarterback sneak it. Get between the tackles and run the ball between the tackles.
Yeah, I think that this is something that the Bears are hopefully talking about because you saw it 2 games in a row where the game was closer than it should have been. And when it's closer than it should be, that means you have to have your elite guys out there in games that should be blowouts. I mean, let's face it, towards the end of the Lions game, it should have been a blowout to where none of your starters were on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And the 2-point conversions. Granted, I was glad when they made them. Is this going to be a theme that we start seeing going forward, where they are very comfortable going for 2-point conversions on the regular?
Well, Olin Kreutz was talking about it this morning. I was listening to the score on the way to work, and he thinks that they're not going to necessarily make a habit of it because the fact of the matter is it's going to depend on the situation you're in. If you're scoring a touchdown early in the game, I don't think you risk not getting at least 1 extra point. I think you kick the extra point. If you have a significant lead, then I think, yeah, you will go for the 2-point conversion a little more often than you did. But I don't think this is going to become a regular thing. You're going to see it a hell lot more often, but not in every situation. There's speculation that, this is just going to kind of be their default thing. And I don't think that's the case. I think there are going to be situations where you say, take the points. You got to take them. And now that Cody Parkey's made those 3 field goals and he's feeling a bit more confident, that may also alter things with Nagy because this kind of started when he was missing these kicks. He did it early in the game yesterday with the 2-point conversions, but if they're in a much tighter game or, the situation is they're down, then they're going to not risk that as much. I mean, if you're down 7-0 or 10-3, I think you rather go for the extra point in that case. So, yeah, I think we'll see some more, but I don't think it's going to be as frequent as some people think.
I think it's also, this was definite backlash from Cody Parkey's performance last week.
Sure.
Is Matt Nagy knew that the points in this game were going to be at a premium. And I think more points were scored than maybe we expected, but maybe around that. But he knew points were at a premium, and he wasn't going to put his kicker out there who's already got the nerves and to kick these extra points when, he's just going to go for the 2. And it worked out. It worked out this time. Statistically, I don't know what the numbers are, but it definitely worked out. And, I think he's going to, after Parkey made those 3 kicks and made them, right down the center, they weren't hold your breathers, but I think he's going to start to regain some confidence with Cody Parkey, and we're going to get back to a lot more just kicked extra points.
Well, did you see the way he kind of winked at him and said, "I had faith in you all along," and smiled? That right there is the guy you want coaching this team. I really, really liked that. And if that helps give him more confidence, then, damn straight, because we're going to need him to have a lot of confidence, especially in big games coming up.
Yeah. So, what's also nice is the way they played this game offensively. It was really different way than they played the game against the Detroit Lions just, a few days ago. And on a short week like this, you really don't have time to go and watch the game film from this game. You have to just start installing your game plan for Thursday. So if you're the Detroit Lions, you watched the game the once and you went, crap, this is not the team that we've been preparing for. Because honestly, you start preparing for when you were playing a Sunday game and have to play again on Thursday morning, you start preparing your game plan in advance, and then you start installing it right after the game because you don't have time to do your usual routine. And I'm sure the Lions were preparing for the Bears the way that they had played them just a week ago. And when they saw the Bears play calling and play formations and things look different than what they saw just a week ago, that's adding a wrinkle. That's saying, we need to be prepared for something that we're not prepared for.
Yeah, looking at this game on Thanksgiving, both teams did play Sunday, but it's going to be harder for the Bears. They played Sunday night and they have to travel. Luckily, it's only like an hour flight. But this is a game where I could honestly see the Bears looking a little flat. I would not be surprised if they lose on Thursday.
I mean, that's possible, but at least they're not looking forward to a big game after this, where they have the Giants after this.
Yeah, and you pretty much get a bye week, more or less. I mean, not a full one, obviously, because you play Thursday and then you don't play until the next Sunday. Not the upcoming one, but the next one. So, you got some time to relax too.
Yeah, so it's hard. It's a lot harder to focus on your opponent and not look ahead when you're facing an inferior opponent now and you've got a big game coming up. Like if they had the Packers coming up the next game, yeah, I could see them looking a lot more likely to look flat than they're playing to the Giants. The Giants are a bad team, and the Bears, what are they looking forward to? What are they looking ahead to? So they can actually focus. They know that this division game basically counts as 2 wins if they win or 2 losses if they lose. So they've got to really, hammer this one away and take advantage. I think the cool part about it is the Bears have been able to take their opponents and really take them mentally out of the games. Is you look at some of these wins and they're forcing teams out of their headspace, and they're making dumb penalties. Lions, Vikings, both of them committing dumb personal fouls, and that's what happens when you get frustrated. When the other team has you frustrated, you start playing frustrated and making dumb mistakes. And that's the cool thing is that for the most part, the Bears have been able to keep their cool, and they've been the ones that have been dictating how games have been played. And that's great. And when they're playing against the Lions team that just has poor discipline, that plays into your favor.
Yeah, I mean, this is still a fairly important game coming up. I mean, the fact that they won the first 2, you looked at the 11 days and you saw Lions, Vikings, Lions, and you said, okay, the very important ones are the 2 at home, and they won those. So that's going to feel good for them, knowing that they took care of those and that they'll probably feel even better going into this upcoming one against the Lions. I also think that the way the Bears go into this game, if they win this, and they clinch at least a 500 record, I mean, that pretty much right there eliminates any hope for the Lions, if there still even is any, which I doubt there's much, but there's always got to be some at this point. And if the Vikings lose, then they have a really healthy lead in the division. So it's not to say this game isn't important. It's just nice that they took care of probably the two most important games of this 11-day stretch.
I mean, if you look ahead at the schedule, they've got 6 games left. 3 against good teams, 3 against scrub teams. So they've got the Lions, the 49ers, and the Giants. If they're able to put away those 3, which they should, they got a 10-win season right there. And that means if they can just win 1 out of the 3 against the Rams, the Packers, and the Vikings, you're at an 11-win season. And the Packers are vulnerable. You just beat the Vikings. And to be honest with you, I think they can beat the Rams. I think they'll have a hard time beating the Saints. I think they can beat the Rams. The Rams have one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL. And they get a lot of their steam going from the run game. And the Bears are just absolutely stuffing the run. You stop Todd Gurley and you force Jared Goff into being one-dimensional. I think you got a shot.
You're talking about stopping the run, and I think this is another thing that's not being talked about enough, because there's a lot of other things that are being talked about, obviously. The fact that they're stopping the run and they're establishing that the run is not going to get by them, this is making their quarterback throw more. They're forcing the quarterback to throw. And when you have constant pressure on the quarterback, like they did last night, that's what I also really wanted to talk about, was the defense and just what they did. But, all in all, they forced Cousins to throw. They gave up 22 rushing yards to the Vikings yesterday. I know the Vikings aren't a great rushing team, but, Cooks is a pretty good running back, and he went nowhere yesterday.
Let me give you the stats that they had. Dalvin Cook, who was a first-round pick, and he's been a media darling as a stud waiting to happen. He ran 9 times for 12 yards. What makes it even crazier is he had 1 run where he ran for 7 yards. You take that 1 run away, he ran 8 times for 5 yards.
Yeah, he went nowhere.
Even funnier than that is Murray ran 4 times for 5 yards. And if you take away his longest run, which was 6 yards, then he ran 3 times for -1 yards.
Well, I think we could say one thing right off the bat. Defensive player of the game was Akeem Hicks, and he was a huge part of everything, including that run defense and including the pressure.
Oh, absolutely. And I just want to talk about what the Bears have done defensively for this year so far. Not just this game, which they had a great game, for the year. If you look at the total yards per play that they give up, it's 4.92, which is second in the NFL. They give up 77.8 rushing yards per game, which is first in the NFL. They allow 3.47 yards per carry, first in the NFL. They allow 5.7 yards per pass play, which is fourth in the NFL. They have a 4.7% interception rate, first in the NFL. They only allow 18.3 first downs a game, second in the NFL. And they only allow first down, they only give up a 35% complete or first down rate on third down. So that third down rate is 35% that they give up. And that's third in the NFL. And if you look at the interceptions that they've had so far, in 2015, they had 8 interceptions for the entire season. 2016, they had 8 interceptions for the entire season. 2017, they had 8 interceptions for the entire season. So far in 10 games, they have 18 interceptions. And the only opponent that they haven't picked off was Sam Darnold, who has 14 interceptions this year.
That's wonderful.
So I started to write down, I was like, which defensive players were dominant? And I wrote Akeem Hicks. Clearly he was dominant in this game. I was like, Khalil Mack. Clearly he was dominant in this game. And I was like, Eddie Goldman. Clearly he was dominant in this game. And I was like, Kyle Fuller was dominant. I was like, Bryce Callahan was dominant. Leonard Floyd was dominant. Eddie Jackson was dominant. Like, the weak link on this team defensively was probably Roquan Smith, who had a pretty solid game.
Yeah, he just had one really bad missed tackle, but that was kind of a rookie mistake.
So, like, there's just really no weak links on this team. The corners look great. That front seven is just dominant. And Khalil Mack had another one where he took his non-dominant hand, not his right hand where he's dominant, his left hand, and he took a 350-pound offensive lineman and just threw him like it was a rag doll.
Or how about the forced fumble? He had 3 guys tackling him, and he still ripped the ball out and landed on top of it.
Can you imagine being this giant human being that everybody looks up to and goes, what the hell were you fed as a child? And have Khalil Mack just throw you around like, you're nothing.
Here's
what
an
does that
interesting
make you feel like.
It's almost hard to describe what Khalil Mack can do at times because it doesn't even look possible. Like, the fact that he stripped that ball out with 3 guys on him, and you know what makes him really special too, is Akeem Hicks has always been an elite defender and very underrated. But look, last night you saw Khalil Mack getting like double teamed. He'll still break through. And while your guys are all teaming up on him, that just leaves a nice hole for Akeem Hicks. So it's basically a race between Khalil Mack breaking through 3 guys or Akeem Hicks just going around a nice open hole and see who gets there first.
I mean, there was the one play where nobody blocked Akeem Hicks.
He just went right through. There was nothing there, nothing in front of him.
Like, I think he was looking around like, all right, where's this surprise block coming from? Are they going to blindside me from my left? Nope, nobody. Let me just go in here and smash everybody.
He just plowed right into Kirk Cousins. Now, here's an interesting stat. This is from Next Gen Stats. Week 11 disruption leaders. Akeem Hicks with 8. Cameron Hayward of the Steelers with 8. And then Khalil Mack with 7. So Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks, those two combined, 15 disruptions in one game.
It's unreal. And Leonard Floyd played great.
He did. I think you look at the stats and they don't reflect how good that front seven was. The fact that they only had 2 sacks is amazing because Kirk Cousins was getting chased down and hit seemingly on every single play. They were all over him. And you know what? He was scared. I'm telling you, he was scared out there.
Is every time he passed the ball, he was getting hit. That pocket collapsed. I don't think he had a clean pocket at all at any point in that game.
No.
It was just how quickly could he get that ball out?
No, exactly. He was constantly under pressure. And if you want my opinion on the best secondary play of the game, I think a lot of people would agree it was the pick 6 by Eddie Jackson. That wasn't some lucky deflection. That wasn't some errant throw. He was under pressure. He threw high. Jackson read it all the way, timed his leap perfectly, and was off to the races. And then he was the next conductor of the CSO. It was great.
Yeah, it was just phenomenal. And when you watch this defense play, is towards the end of the third quarter and then the fourth quarter when they were, I'm calling it garbage time, even though the game wasn't decided. It was kind of garbage time. Is when Kirk Cousins got most of his production numbers, and those wide receivers got most of their catches.
Against the prevent defense is what you're saying, basically.
Yeah, the Bears were dropping their safeties to prevent big plays, and they were giving up the shorter stuff. If the Bears would have just kept the throttle on, they would have actually just. I think they would have gotten so many sacks in the fourth quarter if they would have just played tight coverage and had brought the safeties down, closer to the action. It's this defense is just absolutely dominant. And the only concern I have is when teams go no huddle, they start to wear down the front seven, and you start to pick up passing yards on those plays. I'm not as worried about the Lions being able to go no huddle on the regular, but when you get in the playoffs, Drew Brees will do that to you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you've seen ways that teams have kind of adjusted. After being dominated, they'll quicken the pace a lot, and that will force the Bears to have to make some adjustments themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And although they've got a lot of people that can bring pressure, they're not as deep as the defensive line as you would like.
Right. I mean, unless we could clone Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks, if you have two Khalil Macks and two Akeem Hicks, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, and you've got Aaron Lynch in the concussion protocol right now.
Yeah, that's kind of a tough loss. Hopefully it's not for too long, but yeah, he's a solid depth piece to have. But yeah, I mean, those are all good points. I cooked up. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Did you happen to look at the injury report that was released today?
The one about Trubisky?
Yeah, Shaheen is in the concussion protocol. Lynch is in the concussion protocol, and Trubisky didn't play today or practice today because of an injured shoulder. And I'm not worried, but I'm slightly worried.
Well, the way it was worded, I think anytime you have your quarterback in this situation, you are going to worry. But I feel like if this was truly serious, there would be a lot more talk about it. And I think it might have just been a small tweak from that late hit. So, yeah, I have my concerns, but from what it sounds like, it's not serious. We would know if it was serious.
Did you happen to look at the Lions injury report?
Not much.
Their top running back will not play against the Bears.
Oh, that I did hear about, yes.
Yeah, he's out. So that means that their top running back averages 3 yards a carry for the season.
Well, then you're going to have to just do the same thing. Stop the run, stuff it, and make Stafford throw. Keep the pressure on him.
Yeah, I want to see 3 pick sixes against Stafford, and he is capable of doing it.
Yeah, we'll see. Again, I don't know. I have that weird feeling the Bears are going to lay an egg on Thanksgiving. I don't know why. I have all the confidence in the world in this team right now, but I just feel like after such a short turnaround, and the fact that this Lions team, while overall not good, is very unpredictable, they'll randomly have these amazing games against good teams. So, I don't know. I don't know why my confidence is so low in this game coming up, while I'm feeling pretty good about beating teams like the Rams. But for some reason, I kind of have my doubts against the Lions on Thanksgiving. I hope I'm wrong.
Because that's traditionally what the Bears do. They giveth and then they taketh away.
Exactly. Exactly.
But if you look at the big wins that the Lions have had, it has been Golden Tate and Kerryon Johnson having big games. Neither one is not on the team anymore, and one is injured.
That's true.
So who is going to take over that game? Who's going to give you that big performance that you need?
The only way Stafford would do it is if the Bears defense is really struggling, which hopefully it won't.
Yeah, I think Akeem Hicks wants that turkey drumstick.
I think Khalil Mack wants a complete turkey.
He's going to get one. And the turkey's name is Matt Stafford.
No, you know what would be so funny is if the Bears win and they give him the turkey, they have one for the team, one for Khalil Mack, and they're interviewing Khalil Mack on the sideline, and while the reporter quickly looks and gives a report before they talk to him, you just see him in the background shove the entire turkey down his throat and just eats it in one bite. And
He's just eating it, handfuls of it out of Matt Stafford's helmet that he ripped off his head, and he just took it as a souvenir, as a trophy of his hunt.
Because, I bet you Khalil Mack could eat a whole turkey pretty quickly.
Probably. I mean, Akeem Hicks definitely eats that turkey the fastest.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if they can feast on quarterbacks, they can feast on a turkey. And they feasted on Kirk Cousins. Here's something I wanted to ask you about Kirk Cousins yesterday. Maybe not just him, but the coaching as well. On their last drive, when they scored their last touchdown, right before the onside kick, am I the only one who thought their clock management was terrible?
Oh, it's absolutely terrible. And it shouldn't even been.
There was no sense of urgency.
And it wasn't even, and that drive shouldn't have even been that important, because the first touchdown drive was a gimme from the refs.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that DPI, come on. He tripped.
It was if they would have called illegal contact, I would have groaned and rolled my eyes, but I would have accepted it. But pass interference, they tangled their feet. That's not a pass interference. That's they tangled their feet. And the roughing the passer, I think that was a little ticky-tack.
I think if you would have had that roughing the passer call a few years ago, I would have said that's complete horse manure. But in this day and age, I'm like, well, the way they call it these days, I'm almost not surprised. But I think either way, if it was a few years ago or now, the DPI call was far worse than the roughing the passer call.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And Akeem Hicks needs to be smarter about those, because if he doesn't slam him to the ground, then that series is done, and it really puts the Vikings in a hole.
Hey, I will eat my turkey dinner with a lot more happiness if it means 3 wins in 11 days.
Oh, I know. That would be amazing.
Like, I don't want to be all pissy, when the Bears lost, to the damn Lions, but if they win, I'll feel a heck of a lot better. I have a fun stat before we move on.
Oh, sure.
I kind of cooked this up myself. And I love comparing this to the 2013 Bears, because I don't think there's a team in history of my teams that I loathe more than the 2013 Bears. So here we go. The last 3 games, the Bears have surrendered a total, 3 games total, 196 rushing yards. Total. That is an average of allowing about 65 yards per game. In 2013, 12 of their 16 games, they allowed the opponent to rush over 100 yards. Only twice so far in 10 games have they allowed that. In 6 of those games in 2013, they allowed over 198 yards in 6 games rushing. What a difference.
Speed, power you've got power guys in the center of the defensive line. and Keem Hicks and Eddie Goldman that are just absolute brick walls. And anytime that there's even a glimmer of hope and a ray of light for that running back to see is they've got two powerful, fast inside linebackers that are just squashing it.
It really is amazing what they've done on the run. I mean, look at how many times where it's been like the opponent's 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2 or 4th and 1, and they need a big conversion. They put it on the ground and they are just stuffed.
Yeah. And the thing is the old adage about Leonard Floyd was you run at him, and he's got too light of an ass to be able to stand pat. And he's been a fantastic player against the run, especially when it's on the other side. Is he takes those angles and comes down the line and just takes that guy out, especially if he's trying to run, string it out.
Yeah. It's special. Now, okay, I'm trying to remember, what was that front seven in 2013? I hated that team so much. I've blocked so much of it out of my memory. Because Julius Peppers was on that team. It was his last year as a Bear. I don't know if they still had Bostic or if he was cut in preseason by then. Lance Briggs was still on the team, wasn't he? But that was like when he was ancient and couldn't move. Urlacher was gone. That might have been the first year of Willie Young, right?
Stephen Paya.
Stephen Paya, yeah.
Henry Melton.
Yep.
Julius Peppers. Corey Wooten.
The man who ended Brett Favre's career.
Briggs. Bostic. Kasim Green. Blake Costanzo.
I honestly don't even remember that guy.
And then they had the safety, the dynamic duo at safety of Chris Conti and Major Wright.
Don't say his name.
All right, I'll say their other one, Craig Stelz.
That defense was garbage. A lot of guys past their prime on that team, on that defense. A lot of old guys.
But here's another Bear stat. Is the last time the Bears were behind in a game was a calendar month ago.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And here's another funny one is, oh my God, I'm drawing a blank on his name. He was the defensive back that got arrested last year and they didn't cut him. And he got arrested with a Green Bay Packer player.
Wait, who?
The Bears had a defensive back that got arrested in the offseason, and he got arrested with a Green Bay Packer player. And they ended up cutting him after that.
It wasn't the guy with all the drugs, right?
No, who?
That was Sam Hurd, wasn't it?
No, this was this year.
Oh, this year. Oh God, I don't even know. I don't even remember that.
Man, I'm having such an old man moment here.
Yeah, I don't even know what you're talking about, honestly. Maybe I just forgot or I didn't hear. I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about.
DeAndre Hall.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, so DeAndre Hall, now he plays for the Eagles. And when he got signed, after he got cut by the Bears, he signed with the Eagles. And he said, I'm so glad to be out of Chicago and in this winning culture. LOL. Bears are in first place. And the Eagles just got blown out by 40 points.
Yeah, pretty badly.
Oh, the best part, I watched that game at the airport because I was waiting for my flight. And I watched it and I was just chuckling because I remember when the Bears played the Eagles last year and the Eagles were showboating on the side and doing their orchestrated dances, and to see the Saints do that to them Oh man, it was hilarious.
You know, that Eagles game, that Bears Eagles game, that was nearly a year ago at this time. It was in November. So go back and watch that Bears game against the Eagles, where Bears fans in Philadelphia had massive signs that said Firefox on it and had Mozilla Firefox with John Fox head on the end. And now here we are, 7-3, first in the NFC North. The Bears were 3-8 after that blowout loss against the Eagles. Now, that's still not the worst game in recent memory they played in Philadelphia.
It wasn't the worst. It was the most infuriating for me, though.
Really?
Oh, it was so infuriating.
Well, to me, it said that there was a huge gap between the two franchises at the time. You know what time I'm talking about before that, don't you? Yeah.
Against the Eagles?
In Philadelphia.
I probably blocked it out of my mind.
It's that the very hated 2013 team when they had a chance to win the NFC North against that bad Eagles team. They lost like 52-12 or something like that.
Yeah, I definitely blocked that out of my mind.
I only remember the first quarter because I turned it off after that.
Yeah, that was one of those ones like when you have a bad incident in your life and coping mechanism is you just forget it happened.
I mean, I can't blame you. That was something to forget. I mean, that's what set up week 17 that year. They had the perfect gift. Green Bay lost, the Lions lost. All the Bears had to do was beat a bad Eagles team and they would have won the NFC North. And then that happened. It was the game when I think Hester fumbled the opening kickoff, and it just all went to hell after that. Did I tell you I hate that?
Hate the Eagles.
I hate that 2013 Bears team.
The 2013 Bears suck.
I hate them. They should have won the NFC North if they had any defense, and they decided to lose on the last play of the season to Aaron Rodgers in a wide open Randall Cobb. Ugh.
It's always a stab. It's always a stab right in the back.
Yeah. Ugh. Anyway.
I'm just looking at that game, and you gave the Bears too much credit. It was 54-11.
Yeah, I know.
Oh man, that was.
Yeah.
That Nick Foles.
Yeah, it was Nick Foles, wasn't it?
They made it. Nick Foles and LaShawn McCoy just absolutely torched the Bears.
I wonder how many yards McCoy had in that game. It had to be over 100, I feel like.
Do you really want to know?
Lay it on me.
It's 133 yards.
God.
With a 7.4 yards per carry average.
That shouldn't even be possible.
What's even worse than that is Bryce Brown ran for 115 yards on a 12.8 yards per carry.
I don't even remember that. I just remember Shady McCoy being all over the place. Yuck. Ugh. I think that was one of those games where the opponent had well over 198 yards, like I told you in that one stat in 2013. That had to be.
Yeah, and Matt Forte had 29 yards rushing. The leading rusher for the Bears.
Woof. Woof.
Oh, yeah. Tearing off that Band-Aid.
Yeah. Let's not see that again.
No. This team is not going to be like that. Nobody's going to rush for over 100 yards.
Knock on wood.
Definitely not on Thanksgiving.
Shut up.
The starting running back is going to be LeGarrette Blount.
If LeGarrette Blount goes off on Thanksgiving, I am going to come to your house and I will shove a rotten turkey so far up your ass you won't know what to do with it.
You won't even be able to, because I will have found the highest cliff in this area and driven off of it. And I will have this giant like bed sheet flying from my car saying, "Sorry, Bears fan, this was on me."
Oh my gosh. I'm glad at least we have a plan here.
So do you want to switch gears and talk Bulls or Blackhawks?
Well, we got some breaking Bulls news.
Is this the Denzel Valentine?
No. This is breaking.
What?
Are you ready?
Yes.
This is pretty big. You're not going to believe this. No more Big Macs.
What?
Yeah, the longtime tradition of the Big Mac is no more.
When did this happen?
This was just updated 30 minutes ago.
Wow.
Here's the new deal. Fans will now get a free Portillo's hot dog. Sounds great, right? But only if the opposing team misses 2 consecutive free throws in the fourth quarter. What the hell?
Maybe they can get Shaq to play a game
Yeah, really.
and just foul him all fourth quarter.
Seriously. Look, I love Portillo's hot dogs. I love them. I live for Portillo's hot dogs. But the Big Mac tradition was a staple. And you know what? A lot of people probably didn't even get the damn sandwiches, but they just rooted for the Big Mac because it was something fun to cheer on. Do you remember in the days the Bulls were good and they were blowing out a team, and you would have the scrubs, including Brian Scalabrine, come off the bench, and they were at 99 points. They're up by like 15 with like a minute to go. The crowd would rise and chant Big Mac, Big Mac. And then when someone made the Big Mac clinching basket, the crowd would go wild. And if it was Brian Scalabrine, the crowd would go even more wild. I know it's silly, but dang it, that was a great Bulls tradition, and I'm sad to see it die.
I'm a vegetarian, so anytime I went and I got the free Big Mac, I would always find the homeless person ever and be like, "Here's a Big Mac."
Yeah, there you go. Charitable. And you know what? I got the Big Macs. I like a Big Mac. I went for them. It was about the only time I go to McDonald's to get a Big Mac is after a Bulls win with 100 points. It was great. Didn't spend anything.
So these Bulls are not good. Is that news? Anybody out there? Am I telling you something you didn't know?
No, they're not good. They're
Yeah.
banged up and they're not good.
The thing is they've got terrible doctors apparently, because they don't know how long these guys will be out, because Denzel Valentine suddenly went from being close to being back with an ankle to being diagnosed with, quote, ongoing ankle instability, where he will undergo surgery and will be out 4 to 6 months.
So can we blame the turf monster at Soldier Field on this, or does that not really apply?
We can blame John Paxson and Gar Forman. That's who I blame for everything.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, look, this unit, outside of Levine, your essential pieces are all injured. Denzel Valentine, Lauri Markkanen, Bobby Portis, Chris Dunn. Levine and Wendell Carter Jr. are your healthy guys. But everyone else, they're all injured.
And here we go with this. So, for those who don't know, there's a stat called RPM. It's a real plus minus, and it's the player's estimated on-court impact on team performance measured in net points differential per 100 offense and defensive possessions. It takes into account teammates, opponents, and other factors. So it's kind of like a stat measuring how good the player is. And
Like a wins above replacement kind of.
well,
in
they
baseball.
used it in their version of wins against replacement. It's like a factor in that.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like it's like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So top players in the league, or top people, or people at the top of the RPM numbers are like a LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Paul George, Harden, Curry. Those guys are right in the top 5-10 of RPM. Do you know who is tops at the Bulls in RPM?
Levine?
No.
Don't say it's Cameron Payne.
No.
Okay, phew. Wendell Carter Jr.?
No. He's fourth.
Jabari.
No. Justin Holiday. He's the top Bulls player in the league in RPM, and he's number 62 in the league. Number 2 on the Bulls is Ryan Arcidiacono, who is 86th in the league. And then you get a precipitous drop. Is Bobby Portis is 3rd on the Bulls at 234th. Wendell Carter Jr.
hurt.
Wendell Carter Jr. 274th. Tyler Ulis 305th. Chris Dunn 311th. Cristiano Felicio 346th. Zach Levine 367th. Cam Payne 369th. Robin Lopez 381. Chandler Hutchinson 392. Blakeney 482. I'm sorry, 422. What name didn't I say there?
Jabari?
Jabari Parker has the worst RPM out of every single player in the NBA. He is worth, when you use the RPM to figure out how many wins the player is worth, Jabari Parker is worth negative 0.69 games. So statistically, Jabari Parker is the worst player in the NBA. And offensively, his numbers aren't good because they break the RPM into offense and defense. And then I was going by the combined. So Wendell Carter Jr. is actually pretty solid in defense. It's just his offense isn't good in this scoring system.
And you can pardon him because he's only 19 years old and he's learning.
Yeah. When this team gets better, he will definitely shoot back up.
For sure.
Jabari Parker is terrible. And his offense isn't good in the stats, but his defense is just miserable. It is, I mean, put it this way. If you have zero, the zero line, as high up as LeBron James is in the positive, Jabari Parker is that low in the negative. ESPN's their stat page is 11 pages long, and you have to go all the way to page 11 at the very bottom of the page to find Jabari Parker.
Oh my!
I think we can chalk this experiment up as a big fat fail.
Yeah. Wow. Just wow.
So this Bulls team is not good. And I honestly really expected this team to be right on the cusp of making the playoffs. And to be fair, I mean, that was clearly a terrible prognostication. But to be fair, this team has just been decimated with serious injuries. And, but I mean, the thing is, with these injuries, this Bulls team just keeps getting worse. They're basically Zach LaVine and a bunch of guys. I mean, Wendell Carter is, growing and getting better. But this offense is solely Zach LaVine.
Yeah, I mean, and look, how many games have the Bulls been up huge, like early on, and then they've lost by double digits, like the Bucks game when they were up by a ton at halftime, and then they lost like by more than they were up.
Well, you had the Raptors game where LaVine didn't play because he was sick, and they just looked terrible. And I wonder how close they are to losing this locker room. Is you've got, you got a mix of some veteran players and some young players. And you've got a coach who's not a strong coach. At what point do you say, we need to put in a strong head coach, or does this locker room just erupt? I mean, this is just speculation. I don't know anything, but you're seeing some frustrating quotes that, have some tones of frustration from some of the players, Zach LaVine and Wendell Carter, specifically. And these are core pieces to when you're going to be good. You can't lose them, and you can't be so bad that when it's time for free agency that everybody just looks at you as a bottom feeder and a laughing stock team.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think there's obviously going to be a lot of changes by the time this team is hopefully competing personnel wise and on the team itself. Look, I know Fred is a super nice guy and a great college guy, but I've said over and over, he's not an NBA coach. He's just not. And there was a shot of Fred Hoiberg on the bench. I think it was during the Bucks game or the Toronto game. I can't remember which. He's just sitting there, shaking his head and looking down, like looking completely helpless. And it's just at the point where you say, that's not what an NBA coach should be doing or feeling, no matter how good or bad you are. And I don't know how much. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I get it. You're with all these injuries, you got to tank and you got to, bring in more talent with a top draft pick. I get that. But in the meantime, you need to develop the players that are healthy. You need to work on the things that Zach LaVine needs to work on. You need to improve Wendell Carter. So when everybody's healthy and you do get this, possibly a top 5 pick, then you are better for it. You didn't waste this year. This wasn't a lost year. You need to have some silver lining in this season, whether that's Wendell Carter Jr., improved on this, or Zach. It has to be some sort of measurable thing that you improved on in this season, and it can't be a lost season. You have too many guys that are going to be part of your future that are on this team to have lost seasons.
Exactly. And look, you can't blame Fred Hoiberg for losing, because no coach could make this team drastically better in the state that it is. It's just, I feel like there's no control over this team, and he looks like he doesn't know what to do. And look, I get his frustration. I get it. I am not calling Fred Hoiberg, a terrible coach. I just think in the NBA, I just think he's a little over his head. He's a fantastic college coach, and I think if he left the Bulls, there would be many college programs loving to have a guy like him. And as a guy, I like Fred. He seems like a really nice, chill guy, but you gotta have a certain attitude and certain approach as an NBA coach. And I never saw that from him. He wasn't able to control veterans when they had him. And, now everything just looks like it's in shambles. And, I wonder how much he really wants to be there right now in the state of things. I don't know. I have no idea. But, if I were him, I wouldn't want to be in this situation.
Here's the thing with NBA coaches is you are coaching a bunch of absolutely filthy rich people. You need some way to command their respect. A guy like Popovich, he commands their respect because he goes, look at my rings. Look at the things I've accomplished. And you are coming into his system. He's not trying to build his system while you're there. You are stepping into his domain. And he's saying, this is me. And he's got all the other players in line looking at the new person being like, this is how we do this. This is the guy. Fred Hoiberg does not have that resume. He doesn't have Phil Jackson resume. He doesn't have, a Popovich resume. He doesn't have Pat Riley resume.
Not even a Mike D'Antoni resume.
He doesn't have that cachet that that makes people take notice of him and go, all right, I'm going to follow this guy's lead. Like, this is a college guy that has had terrible results in the NBA so far. You've got young kids. You don't have a system built. You didn't build anything around them. You're trying to build them and saying, well, I don't have the guys I need to build this. You don't have anything built. You don't have a resume.
It's like going out and coaching a street ball team in the NBA.
You don't have anything for these guys to just sit there and go, I'm going to go to battle with you. You don't have anything. John Paxson, for all the hate against him, that guy will demand your respect. And he is forceful. He is, a very dominating man. And look, when he didn't get that from what he wanted from Vinny Del Negro, he grabbed him and punched him. He was going to establish his dominance and mark his territory. And whether that's the right thing or the wrong thing, that's one way to do it. Is what's Fred done to lead these men? And that's the thing that's going to get him fired. Not as much the results. If you're like, well, look how bad he's done in the results, I don't care, because I can always argue, look at the rosters that he was given. But it's just the way he's lost, and there's no culture there. That's the most frustrating part, and I think that's the part that's going to get him fired.
Yeah, I agree. It's really ugly right now, just all across the board. And I think if there's one thing that's disappointing, and this is what my brother said after the Milwaukee Bucks game, I'd have to try to find his actual tweet, but if I can't, I'll try to sum it up as best I could. Basically, it's that, you can't blame them for losing because they just don't have the talent to win a lot of games in the NBA right now. That's fine. We can accept that. We can accept losing games, but you look at the way they play some of these games, the way they let things get away. There's a difference between just getting outplayed and looking like you've given up. Because I feel like as
in the sloppiness, this, adding to the sloppiness of play, the unforced turnovers, the not knowing where other guys should be, all those just add on to what you and your brother are saying, that it's a mess.
It is. And it's either the sloppy play, like you said, or it doesn't look like they're even putting in a lot of effort. It's like they're playing hard when they're up, and as soon as the lead evaporates, they're like, okay, we're done here. And you'll see times that they just kind of stand around on defense and don't do much. Here's the exact tweet. Bulls losing to the Bucks obviously is no big deal. The Bucks are much better as it is. But dominating the first half and then coming out and playing selfish, lazy, and all bad second half was disheartening. Selfish and lazy. That's what bothers me. Losing does not bother me. I want this team to get another good pick, and I understand they're not going to win games, but The lazy, selfish, sloppy play, that shouldn't be accepted at any level, no matter how good or bad you are.
Yep. If you lack talent, you should be able to at least put in hard work, effort, and that's free, and everybody is on the same level with that. That's all on you. You know, if it's one thing if I'm trying to guard somebody that's 6 inches taller than me and a lot faster than me and in better shape than me and a better jump shot than me, and I can't guard him. You know, a lot of that's just talent and physical gifts. But if I'm lazy and don't care, that's on me. That's solely on me. I can control that.
Yeah, well said.
So this team is getting to be frustrating, and I went into the season with high expectations, relative high expectations, and not Boston Celtics or Golden State Warriors expectations, but compared to where they have been, I had expectations of them, competing for that 8th spot, and they haven't. And it's been, and even when the injuries, I said, well, I can at least enjoy this team scoring a lot of points, and with Jabari Parker and Zach LaVine, and I can see Wendell Carter grow and at least have fun doing that. And this team just stopped being fun, and they're frustrating.
It's frustrating to watch when you watch it, but I'm at the point where I'm not even invested in the games. Why should I watch them?
It's even worse is a lot of times they've been playing overlapping games with the Blackhawks, and I find myself flipping back and forth going, all right, I'm going to go to the other game. Let me go back to that first game. Maybe the other game is better. And I become like a disinterested fan.
I'll be more interested in watching a bit more Bulls when Laurie comes back and when, Chris Dunn comes back. But, right now, with all the injuries, with the disheartening play, I don't even want to watch him. It's sad. But,
Yeah, it is sad. So you're right. When Markkanen and Dunn come back, and when Crazy Eyes comes back, you hope to see a better product on the court.
They'll at least be entertaining.
I just want to see them play cohesive basketball. And if they get beat by a better team, meh, it happens. But if they blow big leads and they play sloppy and they don't play 100%, it's just still going to be really frustrating.
If you see Lauri Markkanen, Chris Dunn, Zach LaVine have great games and they have a very competitive game against a good team and they lose, you say, all right, we'll take it. We'll take the chances at, the best pick as we can get. And we'll take the fact that our pieces for the future are playing well. And we'll take the fact that they're playing competitive basketball and at least they're not giving in. That's what you want to see.
Absolutely. I don't know the time frame for some of these guys to come back from injury, but it's like you get your hopes up and you're counting down the days, and then you just get told, well, it's going to be another 4 weeks or another 4 months. And it makes it hard as a fan because you want to get excited about something, and Dunn coming back and Markkanen coming back, those things are things to be excited about. And you already distrust this organization, and if they tell you things that you can clearly disprove, it makes them even less truthful. I think they need to start being honest about where the situation is. And I get it if there's a setback, like, oh, you know, the knee was feeling good on done, and then he started doing some stop and start drills, and um, it didn't feel good, and we're gonna shut him down for another 2 weeks and see. Yeah,
Be honest. Don't BS
yeah,
us.
it's not advantageous to lie about it. It's just it frustrates fans. Like,
No.
let us know. Like, you know what? I can brace myself if you tell me Valentine's not going to be back for 6 months. But when you told me there's an ankle tweak and suddenly it goes to 6 months of after a surgery, then that's a big difference in expectations.
Yeah, don't say anything about fans trusting you if you're going to BS us like that.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to wrap this up with the Blackhawks?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thought I have on the Blackhawks right now is how awesome was it to see Coach Quenneville doing shot skis at the Bears game?
How did that even come about? How do you get to tailgate with Quenneville?
I almost feel like he just kind of showed up there and they're like, hey, it's Coach. And then, he just hung out with them. I have no idea, but that's really awesome. And I think it goes to show that every fan who saw it was absolutely loving it and that he has the right to do whatever the hell he wants at this point.
Yeah, I mean, and you know what? When he got fired, there's people that when they get fired from the Bears, or I mean, from the Chicago teams, Bears. I'm just going with John Fox. When somebody gets fired, you're like, good riddance. And I sort of understand why they made that change from Quenneville. And I don't think it's going. I mean, it's clearly not showing that it's making a huge difference. But I get where they were coming from. But I was still sad to see him go. Even when they fired Ditka, I was like, oh, this is time. But Quenneville still just was more sad than that.
Well, and I mean, it really just kind of marks the end of an era. I mean, it wasn't that he came in and he failed. He came in and did better than any coach in the franchise history, and he will always be a legend in the city. It's like when Phil Jackson moved on. I mean, I know the circumstances were different, but are you going to remember Phil Jackson for, leaving? Or are you going to remember Phil Jackson for all the championships he won here? You're going to remember him for the championships. And that's how you're going to remember Coach Quenneville. Like I said, it was just the end of an era. And fans still love him, and they'll always love him.
And he just seemed like a Chicagoan, gruff, mustachy, not boy, not a overly vocal, like you would expect like a LA or New York coach to be.
But he'll express when he's pissed off in his own way.
Yes. He's very Chicago, even though he's not a Chicagoan. He's very Chicago. He represented us, and it was it was cool to see him at tailgating at the Bears game.
You know what? I think? I think that when he's not in a professional setting, I bet Joel Quenneville is like a really outgoing, like happy type, social type guy. Like you saw in that video. He wants to do shot skis. He's going to go out and do shot skis with a big grin on his face. He will smile bigger than he ever smiled as coach of the Blackhawks when he's out in a social event. And he's going to have some fun, damn it. He's going to do those shot skis. And then after the game, Khalil Mack is going to carry him on his back because he's drunk off his ass. And he's got to carry him home.
When I first saw the pictures, I was like, that's not Quenneville. That guy's smiling. That guy's enjoying life. That's not Quenneville. I'm looking at the Joe Quenneville that ate so many aspirin that he got an ulcer. That's the Joel Quenneville that I'm used to seeing.
You know what those shot skis were? That was just his latest Benny's Beverage Depot commercial. It's saying, I still sponsor Benny's, but fuck my life.
That would be the best Benny's ad ever.
Seriously, just come to Benny's Beverage Depot. We got, Tito's homemade vodka, and we have whatever the heck this is, and we're going to do some shot skis.
Yeah, come to Benny's Beverage Depot. I don't have a job anymore, so I can get real drunk.
I'm real drunk, but I still have millions of dollars, so I'm going to spend all my money at some hard-ass liquor.
But I don't even pay for this liquor because I'm getting an endorsement.
Yeah, he probably goes to a Benny's and gets everything free. I mean, if I was an owner of a Benny's franchise here in Chicago, Joe Quenneville came in, I would make sure he wouldn't pay for a dang thing.
What if John Lackey and Joel Quenneville went out for shots?
Oh my God.
I'm just imagining the two of them sitting there having shots, looking angry, but still enjoying themselves. And then somebody puts on a terrible song in the jukebox, and the two of them just turn and shoot daggers and murder the person with the eye daggers. And then they both look at each other, and John Lackey just spits a wad of chaw spit on the ground and then uses his sleeve to wipe it off. And then they just give each other a silent nod and they go back to drinking.
Quenneville gets so drunk that he's riding around on Buttercup.
They're both riding off in the sunset.
And then he uses Buttercup as a hockey stick.
But is John Lackey's got his coconuts, and Joel Quenneville's doing beaver taps with his stick behind him.
I would love to see that.
But as bad as the Blackhawks have been, they're only 3 points out of the wild card, or the wild card spot, the last one.
Yeah.
So let that sink in for a second.
Yeah, I mean their schedule coming up is brutal, so we'll see what happens. But I mean, they have 8 wins, 8 losses, and I think 6 overtime losses now. So
yeah,
I'm not expecting anything big, honestly, but
No, but you know what? Corey Crawford had a hiccup there for a minute, and he's back to just playing absolutely just rock solid hockey.
Oh yeah.
Jonathan Taves looks great. And you know who's starting to play well? I mean, not superstar, but very solid. David Kampf.
Yeah. I like the way Saad has been playing lately, honestly.
Yeah, Saad has been playing well too. And here's part of the reason why you moved on from Quenneville. And if you keep seeing things like this, then maybe they made the right decision. Is David Kampf, since Quenneville had left, his playing time has gone steadily up. He didn't get a lot of playing time with Quenneville. Now it's going up since Q is gone, and he's played well. He's got over 50% on his faceoffs, and his OISV percent is almost a 93, which means he rarely is on the ice when a goal is scored against them, and he limits the high quality chances against them. So, I mean, he's been very steady on, in the third line. So you like to see production from guys like that. Saad has been picking it up. You hope that Schmaltz can start picking it up and play like you expect him to play, and eventually start to see this team morph a little bit and start playing more consistent hockey.
Yeah, absolutely. At least, keep showing some improvement of the young kids. And, I think they're talented enough to at least be better than they had been the past few weeks. Like I said, I don't think they're going to be really great or much of a playoff contender, but I think they at least have enough talent on the team to be respectable.
The frustrating part, though, is since we last discussed the Blackhawks, I think Seabrook's gotten worse.
You know what's funny is because I thought Seabrook for a little while wasn't that bad. And then you're starting to see some of the struggles again.
Yeah, I mean, between dumb mistakes and that boarding, and he looks slow. He just looks like he's getting worse. And you're right. There was a time, a couple weeks into the season that you were like, you know what? This guy's not playing bad.
Yeah, he wasn't the all-star that he was for many years, but he wasn't bad.
No, he just looked steady. And now you're just starting to see him, regress even more below where he was at the start of the season or the end of last season. And that's bad. Like, you've got we harp on this all the time, but you have got a long time left on that contract.
Mm-hmm.
And, you can eat that Duncan Keith contract. Yeah, it's a lot of money, but you can eat one of those. But the contract,
you're stuck with two.
You're stuck with two, and one is much worse than the other one. And the Seabrook play is the more erratic and the one with the lower valley.
Right.
And I don't know how you go on with that. I don't know how you recover from that unless some of these young defensemen just start playing really great hockey, and you say, you know what, we're going to eat this salary because we're stuck with it because we're not paying the other defensemen much, and you just bury him down as either a healthy scratch or on that third pair, and then just live with what you got in the financial binds that you're stuck with. Like, I that's the only way. If other guys,
there's no way you could shed all of that. There's no
you
way.
Can't. And maybe he gets the gunk.
Yeah.
I just don't know how you recover unless you're able to just absolutely hit on young defensemen and have them carry the burden of his poor play.
Yeah, it's not a fun situation to be in.
No, and I would love to know what goes on in his head, because he has to know where he's at in his career and his play
Sure.
now. And it sucks because he's been such a great Blackhawk, and for him to go out like this in just screaming agony, it's sad. It's really sad. And,
It is.
And I would just love to know what he thinks, like what he thinks about when he goes, man, I'm a detriment to this team at this point.
Yeah, it's got to be rough. But I think one of the things that all the fans can say to him is, we're going to remember you for the good times over the bad. It's just the fact that the prime is clearly done and there's a lot left to go. So, that's going to overblow a lot of things now. But when we look back at Seabrook a long time from now, we're going to remember a lot of the good times over the bad. But, you live in the moment, and it's got to stink.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way he's playing currently and has played in recent memory is absolutely 100% forefront of my brain. But the minute either he's no longer on this team or he's retired from hockey, I'm going to forget all of that and only remember how important he was to this dynasty.
Yeah, exactly.
But the last two things I want to bring up, and you sort of brought up the one, is this team, although they are somehow through magic and shoestrings and bubblegum are holding together hopes of a playoff berth. they've got a really tough schedule coming up, and that's really gonna put them in a position of sink or swim.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the worst case scenario, as I've said before, and it would especially apply to now, is if they finish this season right in the middle. It would be more beneficial if they went on a run or they started losing a lot, because being in the middle is the worst case scenario.
Absolutely. Because being in the middle is only okay if you are on the trajectory of going up. Like, oh, we were really bad. Now we're in the middle, and we are one piece away or 1 year of experience away
Exactly.
from being at the top. Then that's okay. Those teams, but it's when you were once great and you've slowly just gone down, and now you're just meandering in the middle. That's at that point where if you were an animal, they would, put you out of your misery. That's the fear I have with this Blackhawks organization. I can tough it out if they're saying, you know what, we're actually going to do the rebuild. We're going to sell anything we can, and we're going to rebuild. I can deal.
I think a lot of fans would be okay with that.
But if you're like, I'm going to keep retooling and try to, insert young players to, fix bad contracts and ship good contracts off to get rid of bad contracts, etc. I can't handle that. I just need a concrete plan that you're going to go on. And if it's, we've got one last hurrah, I think that's a terrible plan. One last hurrah. And that's what they've been doing the last few years.
Yeah. It stinks. After such a dominant run, it just stinks to be in this situation.
Yeah, it does not feel good. It does not feel good to turn into the Detroit Red Wings.
No.
And do you know why? Because Detroit sucks.
Well, boy, you've been hammering on Detroit all show, man.
I love going to hockey games and just chanting Detroit sucks.
Even when they're not playing the Wings.
Even if they're playing Nashville. That's one thing we can agree on, that Detroit sucks.
Well, that chant is I think you hear that chant during a lot of Chicago-Detroit games, but I think it's most prevalent during hockey games between the Hawks and the Wings.
Oh, absolutely. It's kind of a moot chant in the NFL because it's everybody knows Detroit sucks. But in hockey, they had such a long, good run that like it's a lot more fun.
Oh yeah, and I mean
it's not bullying.
And the Hawks and Wings are the biggest rivalry between the two cities.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think it's terrible that the NHL killed it.
That was a poor plan on the NHL's part.
Either keep the Red Wings in the West or move the Hawks to the East. But the fact that you killed arguably the second most historical NHL rivalry behind the Habs and the Leafs, I just think that's a real shame.
Yeah, it sucks. It really does. I mean, as much as I don't like that team, it was get you so pumped up, ready to play when they were going to play that team.
I loved those games. You loved to hate the other team, but you loved watching those games. There are some rivalry games that you dread, but you loved those Hawks and Wings games.
Yeah, when I went to the Winter Classic at Wrigley Field, that was probably the most fun I've had at a hockey game ever. And there was so many Red Wings fans there, and everybody was giving each other grief, but it was done in a respectful way. There was no like F you or bleh. It was, it was a lot of good natured stuff, and everybody enjoyed a really good game.
You could have the two sides, the Hawks and Wings, you could have fun, like with the rivalry. You can have fun without getting nasty.
Tell that to the Predator fans.
Well, other rivalries are different, but I felt like if you look at the rivalry between like the Predators and the Blues, there's some real nastiness there. Chicago-Detroit has had a long, long history of the fan rivalry, but, I felt like, at least in my time, things were probably different in the 70s, 80s, 60s, whatever, but, at least in my time, it seemed like it was overall fierce but respectful. You didn't have to kill each other, but you could rib each other. And it was very enjoyable to try to get into each other's heads without crushing each other's heads against concrete and seats.
Yes.
Maybe
absolutely.
people have different experiences. That's my personal experience.
But there's one more topic that I wanted to talk about with the Blackhawks, and it's just a quick one. I just want to give big time respect to the Blackhawks as an organization. The really classy move is on Hockey Fights Cancer Night. They had Eddie O out there for one last shift.
That was great. And he said that it felt like it was closure. And, I didn't really know that he felt that way. And the fact that he was pretty open about it and that he was able to feel that closure and express it in such an emotional way, it was cool to see. And it was great that they got a win for him.
Yeah, it was a great all-around thing. And there's been a lot of just absolutely fantastic moments over the past, 9-10 years with this organization. And other than hoisting Stanley Cups, this was one of my favorite moments.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that when you saw him skating around, you saw it was very emotional for a lot of different guys who did this one last chip thing, but you really felt the emotions with him.
Absolutely. I mean, just the story behind everything and his battle with cancer and, it was a lot. And he's already a very emotional guy to begin with. He's very comfortable exuding emotion, and he let it show.
Yeah. And I think it was great that he was able to let it show. You don't want someone to not feel the full emotion of this. I think that the fact that he was so open and sharing his experiences is, it's an influential story for everyone.
Absolutely. So, big ups to Rocky and the whole Blackhawks organization for making that happen. And, that it was a great thing.
For sure.
Well, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to talk about tonight.
No, I think I pretty much said my piece.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody so much for listening to this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Please check us out on social media at ShyFanPat1, at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. Hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or the TuneIn app. And your job this week, your homework is to share this podcast with at least one friend who is into Chicago sports. That's how we grow the show. So thank everybody so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31,
the -7.
The Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.